take her back.
The key wouldn't turn. Not because it was broken, but because my loving wife of 15 years had changed the locks while I was working a double shift, fixing the heating system at the community center. Nothing says, "Welcome home, honey," like standing on your own front porch at 11 p.m., holding a bag of takeout Chinese food that's getting colder by the minute, while your house key becomes as useful as a chocolate teapot. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. My name is Ray Cavanaugh, and I'm 40 years old. I fix heating and air conditioning systems for a living, which means I spend most of my time in crawl spaces and basements, dealing with problems that other people create and then pretend don't exist. Turns out, marriage works pretty much the same way. I stood there on the porch, staring at the new deadbolt like it might explain itself. The brass was so shiny it practically glowed under the porch light. Fresh installation, probably done that afternoon while I was elbow-deep in ductwork. Professional job, too. Whoever did it knew what they were doing. "Ray, that you out there?" Mrs. Henderson's voice drifted over from next door. She was 83 and had the hearing of a bat, which meant she heard everything that happened on our street. "Having trouble with your door?" "Just a little mix-up, Mrs. Henderson. Nothing to worry about." But it was something to worry about, wasn't it? You don't change the locks on your own house without telling your husband, unless you're planning something. And in my experience, when wives start planning things in secret, it usually doesn't end with surprise birthday parties. I walked around to the back of the house, hoping maybe Vanessa had forgotten to change the kitchen door lock. No such luck. New deadbolt there too, same shiny brass finish. Through the kitchen window, I could see the lights were on, and there were wine glasses on the counter. 2 of them. Both had lipstick marks on the rim. That's when I heard the laughing. Female voices, coming from the living room. I recognized Vanessa's laugh immediately. It was the same one she used when she was telling stories about stupid things I'd done. High-pitched and sharp, like breaking glass. But there was another laugh, too, deeper and more nasal. That would be her cousin Brenda. Brenda Kowalski was 35 years old and had never met a problem she couldn't make worse. She'd been divorced 3 times, filed for bankruptcy twice, and had a talent for showing up whenever our marriage hit a rough patch. She also had opinions about everything, especially about how I wasn't good enough for her precious cousin. I pressed my ear against the kitchen window. "Should have done this years ago," Brenda was saying. "The man works with his hands, Vanessa. Blue collar all the way. You could do so much better." I know, but it's complicated. There's the house and his business and—" "Screw his business. You're a licensed real estate agent. You could sell this place tomorrow and start fresh somewhere else. Maybe find yourself a real man this time." A real man. That stung more than it should have. I'd spent 15 years providing for Vanessa, keeping a roof over her head, making sure she had everything she needed. I'd worked double shifts to pay for her real estate license, supported her through 2 career changes, and never once complained when she spent more money than we made. But apparently, that didn't make me a real man. What about Ray's tools? His work truck? All that equipment in the garage? Brenda's laugh was like nails on a chalkboard. "What about it? Let him figure it out. You're not his mother, Vanessa. You don't owe him anything." That's where Brenda was wrong. Vanessa owed me plenty. She owed me for the down payment on this house, which came from my savings account. She owed me for the car payments on her Honda Accord, which came out of my checking account every month. She owed me for the credit card bills she ran up buying clothes and jewelry and God knows what else. But more than that, she owed me an explanation. 15 years of marriage, and she couldn't even tell me to my face that she wanted out? She had to change the locks and discuss it with Brenda instead? I pulled out my phone and called her number. Through the window, I watched her look at the screen and then decline the call. She said something to Brenda, and they both started laughing again. That's when I decided to stop being nice about this. I walked back to my work truck, which was parked in the driveway. The truck was a 2019 Ford Transit, white with Cavanaugh heating and cooling, painted on the sides in blue letters. It was loaded with tools, spare parts, and everything I needed to fix heating and air conditioning problems, including problems that involved getting into places where I wasn't supposed to be. I grabbed my tool bag and walked around to the side of the house. Our bedroom window was on the first floor, and I knew the latch was broken because I'd been meaning to fix it for months. Vanessa had mentioned it at least a dozen times, but I'd always had more pressing things to deal with. Funny how procrastination sometimes works in your favor. The window slid open easily. I tossed my tool bag inside and climbed through, landing on our bed with a soft thump. The bedroom was dark, but I could hear the voices more clearly now. They were in the living room, directly below. "The thing is," Vanessa was saying, "Ray's not a bad guy. He's just limited. You know what I mean? Small thinking, small dreams. He's perfectly happy fixing other people's furnaces for the rest of his life. And you're not." God, no. I want more than this, Brenda. I want to travel. I want to live somewhere exciting. I want to be with someone who has ambition, who wants to build something bigger than a small-town HVAC business. Someone like Derek Morrison? Derek Morrison. I knew that name. He was a real estate developer who'd moved to town about 6 months ago. Big guy, expensive suits, drove a black BMW. He'd been buying up properties all over the east side of town, talking about building luxury condos and upscale shopping centers, the kind of projects that would make someone a lot of money if they got in on the ground floor, the kind of projects that would interest a real estate agent looking to make connections. "Derek's been very helpful with my career," Vanessa said. "He's shown me what's possible when you think big." "I'll bet he has." They both laughed at that, and I felt something cold settle in my stomach. This wasn't just about changing locks and ending a marriage. This was about Vanessa trading up, finding herself a man with more money and better prospects, and she'd been planning it behind my back, probably for months. I sat on the edge of the bed in the dark, listening to my wife and her cousin discuss my shortcomings like I was a used car they were trying to get rid of. They talked about my work clothes, my truck, my friends, my habits. They talked about how I watched too much television and didn't read enough books. They talked about how I was content with mediocrity while Vanessa was destined for bigger things. They talked about everything except the 15 years I'd spent loving her. After about an hour, I heard Brenda getting ready to leave. Car doors slammed, engines started, and then the house went quiet. I waited another 10 minutes, then crept downstairs. Vanessa was in the kitchen, washing the wine glasses. She was wearing a black dress I'd never seen before, and her hair was done up in a way that suggested this evening had been planned well in advance. She looked good. She'd always looked good. That was part of the problem. "Hello, Vanessa." She spun around, nearly dropping one of the glasses. "Ray, how did you—" "The bedroom window. The latch is broken, remember? You've been asking me to fix it for months." Her face went through several expressions: surprise, guilt, anger, and finally settling on defiance. "You have no right to break into this house." "My name's on the deed, sweetheart. That makes it my house, too." "Not anymore." She reached into her purse and pulled out a folded document. Legal papers. Divorce papers, most likely, or maybe a restraining order. With Brenda's help, Vanessa had probably been planning this for weeks. "I was going to have these served tomorrow," she said, holding out the papers. "But since you're here, I might as well give them to you now." I took the papers but didn't open them. 15 years, Vanessa? 15 years, and this is how you want to end it? By changing the locks and having me served with papers? You wouldn't have understood. Try me. She set down the wine glass and crossed her arms. "Fine. You want to know the truth, Ray? I'm tired. I'm tired of living in this little house in this little town with a man who has no ambition. I'm tired of watching you come home every night covered in dust and grease. perfectly satisfied with fixing other people's problems for $40 an hour. I'm tired of pretending that this is enough for me. What about what we built together? What about the life we made? What life? We go to work, we come home, we watch television, we go to bed. On weekends, you putter around in the garage while I do housework. That's not a life, Ray. That's just existing. Maybe she had a point. Maybe we had fallen into a routine that was more about survival than living. But that's what marriage was supposed to be, wasn't it? Building something stable and reliable together, creating a foundation that could weather whatever storms came along. So you found someone better. It wasn't a question. I'd heard enough of her conversation with Brenda to know where this was heading. Derek Morrison is a successful businessman. He's building something important in this town, something that will last. He sees potential in me that you never did. I paid for your real estate license. With money you made crawling around in basements. That hurt. It was supposed to hurt. Vanessa had always been good at finding the words that would cut the deepest. So what happens now? I asked. Now you sign the papers and move out. I'm keeping the house. The hell you are. Check page 3. I'm claiming it as part of my business assets. I need a home office for my real estate work, and this house is perfect for that. Derek thinks, I don't give a damn what Derek thinks. You should. He's going to be my husband. The words hung in the air between us like a challenge. Vanessa was watching my face, waiting for a reaction, waiting for me to explode, probably, so she could add violent temper to whatever list of complaints she'd already compiled for her lawyer. But I didn't explode. Instead, I felt something cold and calculating settle into place behind my ribs. Something that had been building for months, maybe years, as I watched our marriage slowly disintegrate while pretending everything was fine. Well, I said finally. I guess that settles it. Ray, No, you're right. You deserve better than what I can give you. You deserve Derek Morrison and his BMW and his big plans for luxury condos. You deserve all of it. She looked confused, like she'd been expecting a fight and didn't know how to handle agreement. I'll sign the papers, I continued. I'll move out. I'll give you everything you want. Really? Really. But I want something in return. What? Time. Give me 2 weeks to get my affairs in order, find a place to live, figure out what to do with my business. 2 weeks, and then I'll be gone. She considered this. 1 week. 10 days. Fine. 10 days. We shook hands on it, like we were closing a business deal instead of ending a marriage. Her skin felt cold against mine. I'll sleep in the guest room tonight, I said. Tomorrow I'll start looking for an apartment. Ray, I'm sorry it has to be this way. No, you're not. She started to protest, but I held up my hand. Don't, please. Let's just get through the next 10 days without making this any harder than it has to be. I went upstairs to the guest room and lay down on the narrow bed, staring at the ceiling. Through the thin walls, I could hear Vanessa moving around in our bedroom, her bedroom now. She was probably calling Derek, telling him how well it had gone, how I'd agreed to everything without a fight. She was probably right to be pleased. I had agreed to everything. I was going to sign the papers and move out and let her have the house and start her new life with her successful businessman. But that didn't mean I was going to make it easy for her. I pulled out my phone and started making a list. The next morning, I woke up at 5:30, same as always. Vanessa was already gone. Her car wasn't in the driveway, and there was no note. Probably spending the night at Derek's place, celebrating her victory. I made coffee and sat at the kitchen table, looking at the divorce papers in the morning light. They were thorough. I had to give her credit for that. Vanessa was getting the house, half of my business assets, and spousal support for 2 years. I was getting my work truck, my tools, and the privilege of starting over at 40 years old. The papers were prepared by Hoffman & Associates, which was the biggest law firm in town. Expensive lawyers. Derek Morrison expensive, which meant he'd probably been planning this as long as Vanessa had. Maybe longer. I was supposed to feel angry about that, but instead I felt something else. Relief, maybe. Or clarity. For the first time in months, I knew exactly where I stood and what I was dealing with. No more pretending, no more hoping things would get better. The situation was clear, and that made it easier to plan my next moves. My first call was to Tommy Kowalski. Tommy was Brenda's ex-husband, the second ex-husband, not the first or third. He was also a locksmith, which made him useful for my current situation. More importantly, he hated Brenda with the kind of pure, focused hatred that only comes from being married to someone who makes your life hell for 3 years. "Ray Cavanaugh," he said when he answered the phone. "Haven't heard from you in a while. How's married life treating you?" "About as well as you'd expect, considering your ex-wife is involved." Tommy laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Brenda's been stirring up trouble again?" "You could say that. She's been helping Vanessa plan my divorce." "Ah, shit, I'm sorry, man, that sucks." "It is what it is, but I need a favor." "Name it." "I need you to change some locks. Today, if possible." "Your house?" "My office. I owned a small building on the south side of town where I ran my HVAC business. It had office space in front and a workshop in back, with a parking area for my trucks and equipment. Vanessa had a key to the building, which she'd used occasionally over the years to drop off paperwork or use the bathroom when she was showing houses in the neighborhood. According to the divorce papers, she was entitled to half the business assets. But that didn't mean she needed access to the building while I was figuring out exactly what those assets were worth. "I can be there by noon," Tommy said. "Standard deadbolt okay? Or you want something more secure?" "More secure. And Tommy, if anyone asks, especially Brenda, you never talk to me." "Understood." My second call was to Mike Santos, my accountant. Mike was a thin, nervous man who wore thick glasses and worried about everything, which made him excellent at his job. He'd been handling my books for 8 years, and he knew my business inside and out. "Ray, good to hear from you. I was just reviewing your quarterly estimates. You're having a good year." "About that, Mike, I need you to do something for me. I need a complete audit of my business assets going back 5 years. Everything. Equipment, inventory, accounts receivable, the works. That's going to take some time, and it's not cheap." "How long?" 2 weeks, maybe 3 if you want it done right." "I need it in 1 week." "Ray, I'll pay double your usual rate, triple, if you can have it done in 5 days." There was a pause. "Can I ask what this is about?" "Divorce." "Ah, say no more. I'll start on it today." My third call was to Jerry Hoffman at Hoffman & Associates. Jerry was the senior partner at the law firm that had prepared Vanessa's divorce papers. He was also a client. I'd installed a new heating system in his house 2 years ago, and I'd been maintaining his office building's HVAC system for the past 5 years. "Ray, how are you doing? Please tell me you're not calling about problems with the office air conditioning. We've got a big case starting Monday, and if the AC goes out..." "No problems with your AC, Jerry, but I do need a lawyer." "What kind of trouble are you in?" "The kind that involves your law firm. You're representing my wife in our divorce." Another pause, longer this time. "I see. That does create a conflict of interest, doesn't it?" "It does, which means either you stop representing Vanessa or I find someone else to handle my HVAC contract with your building." It was a bluff, mostly. Jerry's building was a good account, but it wasn't big enough to make or break my business. But Jerry didn't know that, and he was the kind of man who avoided complications whenever possible. "Let me make some calls," he said. "I'll have someone contact you by the end of the day." "Thanks, Jerry. I appreciate it." My fourth call was to Derek Morrison himself. I found his number on his company website, Morrison Development, LLC, big logo, professional photos, lots of talk about transforming communities through innovative real estate solutions. His personal cell phone number was listed right there on the contact page, which struck me as either very confident or very stupid. He answered on the second ring. "Derek Morrison." Mr. Morrison, this is Ray Cavanaugh. I believe you know my wife, Vanessa. Oh, yes. Hello, Ray. Vanessa's mentioned you. His voice was smooth and confident, like a radio announcer's, the kind of voice that was used to getting what it wanted. I'm sure she has. I was wondering if we could meet for coffee sometime this week. I'd like to discuss some business opportunities. Business opportunities? I'm an HVAC contractor. You're developing properties all over town. Seems like there might be some synergy there. Well, yes, I suppose there could be. But given the situation with you and Vanessa, what situation is that? He didn't answer right away. Vanessa probably hadn't told him that I knew about their relationship yet. She was probably planning to break that news gently after the divorce papers were signed and I was safely out of the picture. I just meant, well, Vanessa mentioned that you two were having some difficulties. Every marriage has difficulties, Mr. Morrison. That doesn't mean we can't do business together. Unless you have some reason to avoid working with me? No, of course not. I'd be happy to meet with you. How about Thursday morning? There's a coffee shop on Main Street. Perfect. 9 a.m.? 9 a.m. it is. I hung up and sat back in my chair, feeling better than I had in months. For the first time in this whole mess, I was the one making the moves instead of just reacting to what other people were doing. My phone rang. It was my foreman, Pete Kowalski. Yes, another Kowalski, Tommy's older brother, which made him Brenda's other ex-brother-in-law. The Kowalski family had complicated relationships, but they were loyal to the people who treated them right. Ray, we've got a problem. The Morrison job. Derek Morrison had hired us 6 weeks ago to install HVAC systems in 3 houses he was renovating on the east side of town. It was a big job, worth about $30,000, and we were scheduled to finish it by the end of the week. What kind of problem? Morrison called this morning and canceled the contract, said he was going with another contractor. Did he say why? Something about needing to make budget cuts. But Ray, we're already halfway done with the work. We've got materials on site, labor hours invested. If he cancels now, we're going to lose our shirts. I thought about my phone conversation with Derek Morrison. He'd sounded surprised to hear from me, but not hostile. If he was canceling our contract, it was probably because Vanessa had told him to. She was probably worried that doing business with her soon-to-be ex-husband would complicate her new relationship. Don't worry about it, Pete. I'll handle Morrison. You sure? Because if we can't collect on this job, we'll collect. Trust me. After I hung up, I sat in my kitchen for a while, thinking about the conversation I'd just had with Derek Morrison. He'd agreed to meet with me, which meant he was either very confident or very naive. Maybe both. Either way, it was going to be an interesting week. I spent the rest of the morning at my office, going through files and making lists. Mike Santos was right. I was having a good year. Business was up 20% from last year, and I had more work lined up than I could handle. The Morrison job was a setback, but it wasn't going to break me. Tommy Kowalski showed up at noon with his locksmith tools and a grim expression. Heard about you and Vanessa, he said. Brenda's been bragging about it all over town. What's she saying? That Vanessa finally came to her senses and dumped the loser husband. Her words, not mine. I'm sure they were. Tommy installed new deadbolts on both the front and back doors of my office building, then handed me the keys. These are high-security locks, he said. Pick-resistant, drill-resistant, the works. If someone wants to get in here without a key, they're going to have to break a window. Thanks, Tommy. I owe you one. No, you don't. Consider it my contribution to the Screw Brenda Kowalski Fund. After Tommy left, I locked up the office and drove home. Vanessa's car was in the driveway, which surprised me. I'd expected her to avoid the house until I moved out. She was in the living room, talking on the phone. When she saw me, she quickly ended her call. How was your day? She asked, like we were still a normal married couple having normal conversations. Productive. How was yours? Fine. I showed 3 houses and got 2 new listings. That's great. We stood there looking at each other, both of us pretending this was a normal conversation between 2 people who weren't in the middle of ending their marriage. Ray, about Derek Morrison. What about him? I heard you called him today. I did. We're meeting for coffee on Thursday to discuss some business opportunities. Her face went pale. Business opportunities? He's developing properties. I install HVAC systems. Seems like a natural fit. Ray, you can't what? You can't put Derek in the middle of our divorce. It's not fair to him. I'm not putting him in the middle of anything. I'm trying to run my business by targeting my friend. Is that what he is? Your friend? She didn't answer, but her face told me everything I needed to know. Vanessa, let me ask you something. When exactly did you and Derek become friends? That's not important. It is to me. See, I'm trying to figure out the timeline here. When did you decide our marriage was over? When did you decide you wanted something better? When did you start planning all this? Ray, please. Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you've been planning this for months. The divorce papers were too detailed, too thorough. You had to have been working on them for a while. It's not like that. Then what is it like? She sat down on the couch and put her head in her hands. It just happened, okay? Derek and I met at a real estate conference in January. We started talking and things developed. January. That was 8 months ago. Things developed. Yes. What kind of things? Ray, don't make this harder than it has to be. I'm not making anything hard. I'm just trying to understand how my wife of 15 years decided to end our marriage and start planning a new life without bothering to mention it to me. I tried to talk to you, remember? Last spring, I said we needed to work on our relationship. I said we were drifting apart. I did remember that conversation. It was right around the time I was working 60-hour weeks trying to finish a big commercial job. Vanessa had said we needed to spend more time together, maybe take a vacation or start doing things as a couple again. I'd agreed, but then the next job had come along, and the next one after that, and somehow we'd never gotten around to working on our relationship. So you decided to work on it with Derek instead. It wasn't supposed to happen. But he listened to me, Ray. He made me feel like I mattered. And I didn't. You were always working, always tired, always focused on the next job, the next problem to solve. When was the last time we had a real conversation about something other than bills or schedules or what needed to be fixed around the house? She had a point, and we both knew it, but that didn't make what she'd done right. So you've been having an affair for 8 months. It's not an affair. We're getting divorced. We're getting divorced now. What was it 8 months ago? She didn't answer. Vanessa, I need you to understand something. I'm going to sign your divorce papers. I'm going to move out of this house. I'm going to give you everything you want. But I'm not going to pretend that what you did was okay. I never asked you to pretend anything. Good, because I won't. I went upstairs to the guest room and started packing my clothes. It didn't take long. I'd never been much of a clothes horse. Everything I owned fit into 2 suitcases and a couple of cardboard boxes. While I was packing, I could hear Vanessa on the phone downstairs. She was talking to Derek, telling him about our conversation. Her voice was low and urgent, like she was trying to convince him of something. After about an hour, she came upstairs and knocked on the guest room door. Ray, can we talk? We are talking. I mean, really talk, about what happens next. I opened the door. She was holding a glass of wine, and her eyes were red like she'd been crying. What happens next is I finish packing, find an apartment, and start my new life as a divorced man. What did you think was going to happen? I hoped we could be civil about this, maybe even friends eventually. Friends. Yes. Vanessa, You spent 8 months planning to leave me while pretending everything was fine. You changed the locks on our house without telling me. You're taking half my business and most of my assets. And now you want to be friends? I want us to be adults about this. I am being an adult. I'm giving you everything you asked for. But you're angry. Of course I'm angry. Did you expect me to be happy about this? I expected you to understand. I do understand. You fell in love with someone else. You decided I wasn't good enough for the life you wanted. You made your choice, and now you're living with the consequences. I understand perfectly. It's not that simple. It's exactly that simple. She stood in the doorway for a while, looking like she wanted to say something else. Finally, she turned and walked away. I finished packing and loaded my suitcases into the truck. Tomorrow, I'd start looking for an apartment. Thursday, I'd have my coffee meeting with Derek Morrison. And sometime next week, I'd sign the divorce papers and officially end 15 years of marriage. But first, I had some phone calls to make. Thursday morning came with the kind of gray, drizzling rain that makes everything look tired and worn down. I got to the coffee shop 15 minutes early and claimed a table near the back where I could watch the door. Derek Morrison struck me as the kind of man who liked to make an entrance. I was right. He arrived exactly at 9 a.m., wearing a charcoal gray suit that probably cost more than I made in a week. He was taller than I'd expected, maybe 6'2", with the kind of build that suggested regular gym visits and expensive personal trainers. His hair was perfectly styled, and his shoes had the kind of shine that only comes from professional care. He spotted me immediately and walked over with a confident smile and an extended hand. "Ray Cavanaugh, good to finally meet you." His handshake was firm but not aggressive, and he looked me straight in the eye when he spoke. Whatever else Derek Morrison might be, he wasn't a coward. "Thanks for meeting with me," I said. "Can I buy you a coffee?" "That's very kind. Black coffee, no sugar." I went to the counter and ordered 2 black coffees, taking my time and watching Derek in the reflection of the display case. He was checking his phone, probably texting Vanessa to let her know he'd arrived safely. He looked relaxed, confident, like a man who was used to being in control of every situation. That was about to change. "So," he said when I returned with the coffee, "Vanessa tells me you're one of the best HVAC contractors in town." "She said that?" "She did. She's very proud of your work." "That's interesting. She's never mentioned being proud of my work to me." Derek's smile flickered slightly, but he recovered quickly. "Well, you know how it is. Sometimes we don't appreciate what's right in front of us until circumstances change." "Circumstances? Is that what we're calling it?" "Ray, I want you to know that I have a great deal of respect for you. Vanessa's told me what a good provider you've been, how hard you've worked to build your business. That takes dedication and skill. But not enough to keep my wife interested." The smile disappeared entirely. Derek leaned back in his chair and studied my face, probably trying to figure out if I was going to cause problems for him. "I'm not going to apologize for falling in love with Vanessa," he said finally. "And I'm not going to pretend that the situation isn't complicated, but I want you to know that I never intended for anyone to get hurt." "But people did get hurt." "Yes, and I'm sorry about that." "Are you?" "Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like everything worked out pretty well for you. You got the girl, she's getting the house, and I'm getting the privilege of starting over at 40 years old." "Ray, let me ask you something, Derek. When did you first sleep with my wife?" His face went red. "I don't think that's an appropriate question." "January, February, March, I'm just trying to get the timeline straight. This isn't a productive conversation." "You're right. Let's talk about business instead." I pulled out a folder and set it on the table between us. Derek looked at it like it might explode. "What's that?" "A contract for the HVAC work on your East Side properties." "Ray, I already told your foreman that we're going with another contractor." "I know what you told Pete, but that was before we had our little heart-to-heart. See, I've been thinking about our situation, and I realized something important. What's that? You need me more than I need you. Derek laughed, but it sounded forced. I'm not sure I follow your reasoning. Let me explain. You've got 3 properties that are half renovated. You've got buyers lined up who are expecting to close by the end of next month. And you've got HVAC systems that are partially installed by my crew, which means no other contractor is going to want to touch them. I'm sure we can find someone. Maybe. But it's going to cost you. Any contractor who takes over a job that's half finished is going to charge premium rates, because they don't know what problems they're inheriting. Plus, you'll lose at least 2 weeks while they figure out what we've already done and what still needs to be completed. Derek was starting to look uncomfortable. What's your point? My point is that canceling our contract is going to cost you a lot more than finishing it. Time, money, and credibility with your buyers. So what are you proposing? I'm proposing that we honor the original contract. My crew finishes the work on schedule, you pay the agreed-upon price, and everyone walks away happy. And in return? In return, nothing. This is just business, Derek. I don't mix business with personal matters. He stared at me for a long moment, probably trying to figure out what kind of game I was playing. Ray, I have to ask. Are you going to be able to handle this professionally, given the situation with Vanessa? What situation is that? You know what situation. No, I really don't. Why don't you explain it to me? The divorce. The fact that Vanessa and I are involved. Involved. That's an interesting word choice. Ray, Derek, let me make something clear. My marriage is over. Vanessa made that decision, and I'm accepting it. What she does with her life after we're divorced is her business. What you do with your life is your business. What I do with my business is my business. So you're saying you can separate the personal from the professional? I'm saying I'm a professional. Are you? He thought about that for a minute, then reached for the folder. Can I look at the contract? Of course. The contract was identical to the original agreement, except for one small change. I'd added a clause requiring payment in full within 30 days of completion, instead of the usual 60 days. It was a minor modification, but it would give me some leverage if Derek decided to play games later. This looks reasonable, he said after reviewing the terms. But I have to ask, why are you being so accommodating about this? Most men in your situation would be looking for ways to cause trouble, not solve problems. Most men in my situation don't own successful businesses. I can't afford to let personal drama interfere with my professional reputation. That's very mature of you. I try. Derek signed the contract and handed it back to me. I'll call your foreman this afternoon and let him know we're back on schedule. I appreciate that. We finished our coffee in relative silence, both of us probably thinking about the conversation we'd just had. Derek was probably wondering if he could trust me to keep things professional. I was wondering how long it would take him to figure out that I'd just maneuvered him into a position where he had no choice but to pay me $30,000 for the privilege of sleeping with my wife. Ray, he said as we were getting ready to leave, I want you to know that I respect what you're doing here. It takes a big man to handle a situation like this with dignity. Thanks, Derek. That means a lot. And I want you to know that I'll take good care of Vanessa. She deserves to be happy. She does. We all do. We shook hands again, and Derek walked out into the rain. I sat at the table for a few more minutes, watching him get into his black BMW and drive away. Then I pulled out my phone and called Pete Kowalski. Pete, it's Ray. Morrison's going to call you this afternoon. We're back on the job. That's great news. How did you manage that? I explained the situation to him in terms he could understand. What kind of terms? Business terms. He's got buyers lined up and deadlines to meet. Canceling our contract would have cost him more than honoring it. So we're good? We're good, but Pete, I want you to do something for me. I want you to document everything on this job. Every hour worked, every material used, every conversation with Morrison or his people. Everything. That's going to be a lot of paperwork. I'll pay overtime for the paperwork, just make sure it's thorough. Can I ask why? Let's just say I want to make sure we get paid for all the work we do. After I hung up with Pete, I sat in the coffee shop for another hour, thinking about the conversation I'd just had with Derek Morrison. He seemed like a decent enough guy, which made the situation more complicated than I'd expected. It would have been easier if he'd been an obvious scumbag. But decent or not, he was sleeping with my wife and profiting from the destruction of my marriage, and that meant he was going to pay for it, one way or another. I drove home to find Vanessa's car in the driveway again. She was in the kitchen, making lunch and talking on the phone. When she saw me, she quickly ended her call. "How did your meeting go?" she asked. "Fine. We worked out our business arrangement." "What kind of business arrangement?" "The kind where he pays me $30,000 to finish the work on his properties." "Ray, you can't use your business relationship with Derek to what? Make money? Isn't that what business relationships are for?" "You know what I mean." "No, I really don't. Explain it to me." She set down her sandwich and looked at me with the kind of expression she usually reserved for explaining simple concepts to slow children. "You can't use your professional relationship with Derek as a way to stay connected to our personal situation. It's not healthy for any of us." "Vanessa, Derek Morrison is a real estate developer. I'm an HVAC contractor. He needs services that I provide. This has nothing to do with our personal situation." "Everything has to do with our personal situation. Only if we let it. I'm choosing not to let it." "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means I'm moving on with my life. I'm focusing on my business, my future, my new reality as a single man. What you and Derek do is your business. What I do is mine." She stared at me for a long moment, like she was trying to figure out if I was telling the truth or setting up some kind of elaborate revenge scheme. "Ray, are you okay? You seem different." "Different how?" "I don't know. Calmer, maybe. More focused. I expected you to be angrier about all this." "I was angry. But anger doesn't solve problems. Action solves problems." "What kind of action?" "The kind where I take control of my life instead of letting other people make decisions for me." That evening, I moved my remaining belongings out of the house and into a furnished apartment I'd rented on the other side of town. It was a small place, just a bedroom, bathroom, and combination living room kitchen, but it was clean and quiet and mine. Vanessa helped me load the last few boxes into my truck. We didn't talk much, but the silence wasn't as hostile as I'd expected. Maybe we were both relieved to finally stop pretending. "Ray," she said as I was getting ready to leave, "I want you to know that I never meant for things to happen this way. I know. I did love you. I still do, in a way. I know that too. Then why does this feel so wrong?" "Because it is wrong, Vanessa. Not the divorce. That's probably the right thing for both of us. But the way you did it. The lying, the planning behind my back, the 8 months of pretending everything was fine while you built a new life with someone else. That was wrong. I was trying to protect you. No, you were trying to protect yourself. There's a difference." She started to cry then, standing in the driveway of the house we'd shared for 15 years, watching me load the last remnants of our marriage into a pickup truck. "I'm sorry, Ray. I'm so sorry." "I know you are. But sorry doesn't fix anything." I drove to my new apartment and spent the evening unpacking boxes and trying to figure out how to arrange 15 years of accumulated belongings in a space roughly the size of our old bedroom. It was depressing work, but it was also liberating in a way. Every item I unpacked was something I'd chosen to keep, something that mattered enough to carry forward into my new life. Around 10 p.m., my phone rang. It was Derek Morrison. "Ray, I hope I'm not calling too late." "Not at all. What can I do for you?" "I wanted to thank you for this morning, for handling everything so professionally. I know this can't be easy for you." I appreciate that, Derek. I also wanted to ask you something. Vanessa's worried that our business relationship might make things awkward for everyone involved. She thinks maybe it would be better if I found another contractor for future projects. What do you think? Honestly, I think you do good work, and I'd like to continue working with you, but I don't want to cause problems for anyone. Derek, let me ask you something. Are you planning to stay in this town? Yes, I've got several more projects in the pipeline. And you're planning to marry Vanessa? Yes. Then we're going to run into each other whether we do business together or not. This is a small town, and we're all going to be living here. We can either be professional about it, or we can make everyone's life miserable with drama and awkwardness. You're right. So here's what I propose. We do business when it makes sense for both of us. We're polite when we see each other around town, and we keep our personal and professional relationships completely separate. That sounds reasonable. Good. Then I'll see you when your properties are ready for final inspection. After I hung up, I sat in my new apartment and looked around at my new life. It wasn't what I'd planned, but it wasn't terrible either. I had my business, my health, and my freedom. I had friends who supported me and work that I enjoyed, and I had something else, something that Derek Morrison and Vanessa didn't know about yet. I had a plan. The next morning, I met Mike Santos at his office to review the audit of my business assets. Mike looked like he'd been up all night, which he probably had. His desk was covered with spreadsheets, receipts, and legal documents. Ray, I've got good news and bad news. Which do you want first? Bad news. According to the divorce settlement, Vanessa is entitled to half of your business assets as of the date you filed for separation. Based on my calculations, that's about $47,000. And the good news? The good news is that your business assets have increased significantly since you filed for separation. The new contracts you've signed, the equipment you've purchased, the accounts receivable you've generated, none of that is subject to division. Mike handed me a thick folder full of financial documents. I've prepared 2 separate valuations. One shows your assets as of the separation date, which is what Vanessa's entitled to. The other shows your current assets, which you get to keep. I flipped through the documents, impressed by Mike's thoroughness. He documented every transaction, every purchase, every payment received. It was a complete financial picture of my business, broken down by date and category. Mike, this is excellent work, but I need you to do something else for me. What's that? I need you to research Derek Morrison's business dealings, corporate filings, property records, tax liens, anything you can find in the public records. Mike adjusted his glasses nervously. Ray, that's going to take some time, and I'm not sure it's the best use of your money. How much time? A week? Maybe 2. And it's going to cost you at least $5,000. Do it. Can I ask why? Because Derek Morrison is about to become my ex-wife's husband, which means his financial problems could become her financial problems. And if Vanessa has financial problems, that could affect her ability to pay for the house she's taking in the divorce settlement. You think Morrison's in financial trouble? I think successful real estate developers don't usually cancel $30,000 contracts and then change their minds the next day unless they're worried about cash flow. Mike nodded slowly. I'll start on it this afternoon. Thanks. And Mike, keep this between us. After leaving Mike's office, I drove to the east side of town to check on the Morrison job. Pete Kowalski and his crew were hard at work, installing ductwork in one of the renovated houses. The work was going smoothly, and we were still on schedule to finish by the end of the week. How's it going, Pete? Good. Morrison's been by twice this morning, checking on our progress. He seems anxious to get this finished. Did he say why? Something about buyers doing final walkthroughs next week. He's got a lot riding on these sales. I walked through the house, inspecting the work and taking notes. The renovation was high quality, with expensive fixtures and finishes. Derek Morrison was clearly targeting the luxury market, which meant he was probably leveraged to the hilt on these properties. Pete, Have you met any of Morrison's other contractors? A few. The electrician, the plumber, the flooring guy. Why? Just curious. How do they seem? Nervous, mostly. Word is that Morrison's been slow to pay his bills. Some of the guys are talking about putting liens on the properties if they don't get paid soon. That was interesting. In the construction business, contractors who don't pay their bills quickly develop a reputation. If Derek Morrison was having cash flow problems, it wouldn't take long for word to spread throughout the local contractor network. Pete, I want you to do something for me. I want you to talk to the other contractors, find out who's been paid and who hasn't, but be discreet about it. You think Morrison's in trouble? I think Morrison's overextended, and I want to know how overextended before we finish this job. That afternoon, I drove back to my apartment to find Brenda Kowalski waiting for me in the parking lot. She was leaning against her car, smoking a cigarette, and wearing the kind of tight jeans and low-cut top that had probably looked good on her 15 years ago. Hello, Ray. Brenda, what can I do for you? We need to talk. About what? About Vanessa. About this whole divorce situation. About you being a vindictive asshole. I unlocked my apartment door and held it open. Come on in. This should be interesting. Brenda followed me inside, looking around at my sparse furnishings with obvious disdain. Nice place. Really shows what 15 years of marriage gets you. It gets me peace and quiet. Can I offer you something to drink? I'm not here for a social visit. Then what are you here for? I'm here to tell you to back off. Stop harassing Derek Morrison. Stop playing games with the business contracts and stop making this divorce harder than it has to be. I haven't harassed anyone, and I haven't played any games. Bullshit. You manipulated Derek into honoring that HVAC contract, and now you're sniffing around his other business dealings. Vanessa's worried that you're trying to sabotage her relationship. Vanessa's worried about a lot of things, apparently. She should be, because you're acting like a jealous ex-husband who can't accept that his wife found someone better. That stung, but I didn't let it show. Brenda, let me ask you something. How long have you known about Vanessa and Derek? What do you mean? I mean, when did Vanessa first tell you she was having an affair? She wasn't having an affair. She was exploring her options. For 8 months? Brenda's face went red. That's none of your business. It became my business when she started planning our divorce while I was still paying the bills and sleeping in the same bed. Vanessa tried to talk to you about your marriage. You were too busy working to listen. So she decided to talk to Derek Morrison instead. She decided to find someone who appreciated her. By lying to me for 8 months. By protecting herself from a husband who took her for granted. We stared at each other across my small living room, both of us breathing hard. Brenda was furious, but there was something else in her expression, something that looked like guilt. Brenda, you helped her plan this, didn't you? I helped her realize that she deserved better. You helped her lie to me. I helped her find the courage to leave a marriage that was making her miserable. And you helped her find Derek Morrison. Brenda didn't answer, but her silence was answer enough. How? I asked. How did you introduce them? I didn't introduce them. They met at a real estate conference. But you encouraged the relationship. I encouraged Vanessa to follow her heart, even though she was married to someone else. Especially because she was married to someone else. Ray, you're a nice guy, but you're not the right guy for Vanessa. You never were. Why didn't anyone bother to mention that to me? Because you wouldn't have listened. You were perfectly happy with your little life, your little business, your little routines. You never stopped to think about what Vanessa wanted. What did Vanessa want? She wanted more. More excitement, more adventure, more ambition. She wanted to be with someone who had big dreams and the drive to achieve them. Someone like Derek Morrison. Yes? And you helped her find him. I helped her realize that she had options. I sat down on my couch and looked at Brenda, really looked at her. She was 35 years old and had been married 3 times. She'd declared bankruptcy twice and had a reputation around town for causing drama wherever she went. And somehow, she'd appointed herself as the judge of my marriage. Brenda, can I ask you something? What? Are you happy? What kind of question is that? A simple one. Are you happy with your life? I'm happier than I was when I was married to losers who didn't appreciate me. But are you actually happy? She didn't answer right away, and when she did, her voice was quieter than before. I'm working on it. We're all working on it, but most of us don't destroy other people's marriages while we're figuring it out. I didn't destroy your marriage, Ray. Your marriage was already over. I just helped Vanessa realize it. By encouraging her to have an affair. By encouraging her to take control of her life. At my expense. Sometimes that's how it works. I stood up and walked to the door. I think this conversation is over. Brenda followed me to the door, but she stopped before leaving. Ray, I want you to understand something. Vanessa didn't want to hurt you. She really didn't. But she couldn't stay in a marriage that was breaking her spirit. Her spirit seemed fine when I was paying for her real estate license. Money isn't everything. No, but it's something. And for 15 years I provided it while she figured out what she wanted to do with her life. And now she's figured it out. Yes, she's figured out that she wants Derek Morrison's money instead of mine. Brenda's face went red again. That's not fair, isn't it? Derek Morrison is a successful real estate developer with money and connections and big plans for the future. I'm a blue-collar contractor who fixes other people's heating systems. If this isn't about money, then what's it about? It's about compatibility. It's about shared dreams and values and goals. It's about money, Brenda. It's always about money. After Brenda left, I sat in my apartment and thought about our conversation. She was right about one thing. My marriage to Vanessa had been over for a long time, probably years before Derek Morrison came along. We'd been living parallel lives, sharing a house and a bank account, but not much else. But that didn't excuse what Vanessa had done, and it didn't excuse what Brenda had done to help her do it. My phone rang. It was Pete Kowalski. Ray, I've got some information about Morrison's other contractors. What did you find out? He owes money to almost everyone. The electrician hasn't been paid in 6 weeks. The plumber put a lien on one of the properties last month. The flooring contractor is threatening to pull his crew off the job if he doesn't get paid by Friday. How much money are we talking about? At least $100,000, maybe more. And that's just the contractors I talked to. There are probably others. What about the properties themselves? Are they selling? That's the weird part. Morrison's been telling everyone that he's got buyers lined up, but nobody's seen any evidence of actual sales. No moving trucks, no new residents, nothing. Pete, I want you to finish our work as quickly as possible, and I want you to make sure we get paid the day we complete the job. You think Morrison's going to stiff us? I think Morrison's in a lot more trouble than he's letting on. After I hung up with Pete, I called Mike Santos. Mike, it's Ray. How's that research coming on Derek Morrison? I'm still working on it, but I've already found some interesting things. Morrison Development LLC was incorporated 18 months ago, but it's heavily leveraged. He's got loans against all 3 of the properties he's renovating, plus a line of credit that's maxed out. What kind of loans? Hard money loans, mostly. High interest rates, short terms. The kind of financing you use when banks won't lend to you. That doesn't sound good. It's not. Ray, I think Derek Morrison is in serious financial trouble. If those properties don't sell soon, he's going to lose everything, including his ability to marry my ex-wife and live in my old house. Probably, yes. Mike, I need you to do something else for me. I need you to find out who holds the mortgages on those properties. And I need you to find out what happens if Morrison defaults on his loans. That's going to take some time. How much time? A few days, maybe a week. Do it. And Mike, keep this between us. That night, I lay in my narrow bed in my small apartment, thinking about Derek Morrison and his financial problems. He'd seemed so confident, so successful, so sure of himself. But successful men don't usually have cash flow problems with their contractors, and they don't usually need to cancel and then reinstate $30,000 contracts. Derek Morrison was in trouble, big trouble, and soon everyone was going to know about it, including Vanessa. Monday morning brought news that changed everything. Pete Kowalski called me at 7 a.m., his voice tight with anger. "Ray, we've got a problem. Morrison's checks bounced." "What checks?" "All of them. The partial payment he gave us last week, the material reimbursement, even the check for the permit fees. My bank called this morning. Insufficient funds on all 3 checks." I sat up in bed, suddenly wide awake. How much money are we talking about? $18,000 plus bank fees. Where are you now? At the job site. Morrison's supposed to be here at 8 for the final walkthrough. I'll be right there. I threw on my clothes and drove to the east side of town, my mind racing. Bounce checks were serious business in the construction industry. They could destroy a contractor's reputation overnight, not to mention creating immediate cash flow problems. When I arrived at the job site, Pete was waiting for me with a grim expression and a folder full of paperwork. "Show me the checks," I said. Pete handed me 3 pieces of paper that had been stamped NSF in red ink. Insufficient funds. Derek Morrison's business account didn't have enough money to cover $18,000 in payments to my company. "Pete, have you talked to any of the other contractors this morning?" "Yeah, same story across the board. The electrician, the plumber, the flooring guy, everyone's checks bounced. Morrison owes at least $60,000 just to the contractors working on these 3 houses. What about the properties themselves? Any sign of buyers? That's the other thing. I drove by here yesterday evening, and there were 4 sale signs in all 3 yards. Not sold signs, for sale signs. These houses aren't sold at all." Derek Morrison had been lying to everyone. The buyers he'd mentioned, the closing dates he'd been worried about, the urgency to finish the work. All of it was fiction, designed to keep his contractors working while he figured out how to pay them. At 8 a.m. sharp, Derek's black BMW pulled into the driveway. He got out wearing another expensive suit and the same confident smile, apparently unaware that his world was about to collapse. "Good morning, Ray. Pete, beautiful day for a final inspection, isn't it?" "Derek, we need to talk." "Of course. Let's take a look at the work your crew did. I'm sure it's up to your usual high standards." "Derek, your checks bounced." His smile faltered. "I'm sorry, what?" "All 3 checks you wrote to my company last week. Insufficient funds." "That's impossible. There must be some mistake." "No mistake. I've got the NSF notices right here." I handed him the bounced checks. Derek looked at them like they were written in a foreign language. "I don't understand. There should be plenty of money in that account." "Should be, but isn't. Derek, you owe my company $18,000 plus bank fees, and according to the other contractors, you owe them money too." Derek's face went pale. "Ray, I can explain this. There's been a temporary delay with one of my financing arrangements, but it should be resolved by the end of the week." "What kind of delay?" "The bank that's supposed to fund the construction loan had some paperwork issues. Nothing serious, just bureaucratic nonsense, but it's tied up my cash flow temporarily." "Derek, these houses aren't sold, are they?" "What do you mean?" "I mean there are for sale signs in all 3 yards. You told us you had buyers lined up, closing dates to meet, but these houses are still on the market." Derek looked around like he was searching for an escape route. "The sales are pending. The signs just haven't been updated yet." "Bullshit." "Ray, I understand you're upset about the checks, but I assure you, this is just a temporary cash flow problem. Everyone will be paid in full by Friday." "With what money?" "The construction loan will be funded by then." "And if it isn't?" Derek didn't answer. Pete stepped forward, holding a thick folder. Morrison, I've been talking to contractors all over town. You owe money to everyone. Electricians, plumbers, roofers, landscapers. Word is you haven't paid a bill in 2 months. That's an exaggeration. Is it? Because I've got documentation here that says you owe at least $100,000 to local contractors. Maybe more. Derek's confident facade was crumbling. He looked like a man who'd been caught in a lie so big that he couldn't remember what the truth was supposed to be. Gentlemen, I understand your concerns, but I'm asking you to be patient for just a few more days. Everything will be resolved soon. Derek, I said quietly, what happens if the construction loan doesn't come through? It will come through. But what if it doesn't? He stared at me for a long moment, and I could see the desperation in his eyes. Derek Morrison wasn't a successful real estate developer. He was a man who'd borrowed money he couldn't pay back, made promises he couldn't keep, and built a house of cards that was about to collapse. If the loan doesn't come through, he said finally, I'll figure something else out. Like what? I don't know. Maybe I'll have to sell the properties as is. To who? And for how much? Ray, I really don't think this is the time or place for this conversation. I think it's exactly the time and place. Because you owe my company $18,000, and I want to know how you're planning to pay it. Derek walked over to his BMW and leaned against it, looking defeated. The truth is, I don't know. I've been juggling payments for months, trying to keep everything together until the property's sold. But the real estate market has been slower than I expected, and the construction costs have been higher than I budgeted. So you're broke. I'm temporarily illiquid. You're broke. Yes, I'm broke. Pete and I looked at each other. We'd both been in the construction business long enough to know what this meant. When a developer goes broke in the middle of a project, the contractors are usually the ones who get stuck holding the bag. Derek, what about your other assets? Your car, your house, your personal accounts? Everything's leveraged. The BMW is leased, the house is mortgaged to the hilt, and my personal accounts are empty. What about your relationship with Vanessa? Does she know about your financial situation? Derek's face went red. That's none of your business. Actually, it is my business, because Vanessa is about to become my ex-wife, which means she's going to be your responsibility. And if you can't take care of yourself financially, how are you going to take care of her? Ray, please don't involve Vanessa in this. Involve her in what? The truth about your business dealings? The fact that you're broke and lying to everyone about it? It's not that simple. It's exactly that simple. You're a fraud, Derek. You've been living beyond your means, borrowing money you can't pay back, and lying to everyone about your success. And now, it's all falling apart. Derek stood up and straightened his tie, trying to recover some of his earlier confidence. Ray, I'm going to ask you to keep this conversation confidential while I work out my financial difficulties. Why would I do that? Because it's the decent thing to do, and because making my problems public won't help you get paid any faster. Maybe not, but it might prevent other people from getting ripped off. I haven't ripped anyone off. I fully intend to pay all my debts. With what money? I'll figure something out. I looked at Pete, who shrugged. We both knew there was no point in continuing this conversation. Derek Morrison was broke, desperate, and living in denial about his situation. The only question now was how long it would take for everyone else to figure it out. Derek, here's what's going to happen. You're going to pay my company the $18,000 you owe us, plus bank fees by the end of the week. If you don't, I'm going to file a lien against all 3 of these properties. Ray, please. And I'm going to make sure every contractor in town knows about your bounced checks and your financial problems, because that's what happens when you don't pay your bills. That will ruin me. You've already ruined yourself. I'm just making sure everyone knows about it. Derek got into his BMW and drove away without another word. Pete and I watched him go, both of us probably thinking the same thing. We'd just watched a man's life fall apart in real time. What do you want to do about the tools and materials we've got on site? Pete asked. Load them up. We're done here. What about the work we've already completed? We'll file liens against the properties. Maybe we'll get paid when they're sold, maybe we won't, but we're not doing any more work for Derek Morrison. That afternoon, I called Vanessa. Ray, is everything okay? We need to talk. About what? About Derek Morrison, about his financial situation, about what you're getting yourself into. There was a long pause. I don't think that's appropriate. Vanessa, Derek's business is failing. He owes money to contractors all over town, his checks are bouncing, and he's about to lose everything. That's not true. It is true. I just spent the morning with him, and he admitted it. He's broke, Vanessa, completely broke. Ray, I know you're upset about the divorce, but you can't make up stories about Derek just to... I'm not making up anything. Call him yourself. Ask him about the bounced checks, the failed construction loans, the properties that aren't selling. Ask him how he's planning to pay his bills. Even if that's true, it's temporary. Derek's business will recover. Will it? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like Derek's business was never as successful as he pretended it was. Ray, I'm not going to discuss Derek's private business affairs with you. Fine, but you should discuss them with him, because if you're planning to marry him, you need to know what you're getting into. I know exactly what I'm getting into. Do you? Because Derek Morrison isn't the successful businessman you think he is. He's a guy who borrowed more money than he could pay back and got in over his head. Ray, this conversation is over. Vanessa, wait. There's something else you need to know. What? Derek's been lying to you. About his business, about his success, probably about other things too. And if he's lying to you about his financial situation, what else is he lying about? She hung up on me. I sat in my apartment that evening, thinking about the day's events. Derek Morrison's world was collapsing, and it was only a matter of time before everyone knew about it. The bounced checks would be reported to credit agencies, the liens would be filed against his properties, and word would spread throughout the contractor network. But more than that, Vanessa was about to discover that the man she'd left me for wasn't who she thought he was. The successful real estate developer with big dreams and ambitious plans was actually a broke con man who'd been living on borrowed time and borrowed money. Part of me felt sorry for her. She'd blown up our marriage for a fantasy, and now the fantasy was about to turn into a nightmare. But mostly, I felt vindicated. For months, I'd been made to feel like I wasn't good enough, like I was holding Vanessa back from the life she deserved. Now it turned out that the man she'd chosen over me was a fraud who couldn't even pay his bills. My phone rang. It was Mike Santos. Ray, I've got the information you wanted about Derek Morrison's financing. What did you find? It's worse than we thought. Morrison owes money to 3 different hard money lenders, plus a private investor who put up money for the property purchases. The total debt is over $400,000. What happens if he defaults? The lenders will foreclose on the properties and sell them to recover their money. Any contractors who have liens will get paid from the proceeds, but there probably won't be enough money to pay everyone. What about Morrison personally? He's personally guaranteed most of the loans. If the properties don't sell for enough to cover the debt, the lenders can go after his personal assets. Which are basically nothing. Like he told you, everything's leveraged or leased. So he's going to lose everything. Everything. And he might end up owing money he can't pay back. Mike, I need you to do one more thing for me. I need you to prepare a detailed report on Morrison's financial situation. Everything you've found, documented, and verified. What are you planning to do with it? I'm going to make sure everyone knows the truth about Derek Morrison. Ray, be careful. If Morrison finds out you're investigating his finances, what's he going to do? Sue me? With what money? After I hung up with Mike, I sat in my apartment and thought about justice. For months, I'd been the victim in this situation. The betrayed husband, the guy who wasn't good enough, the man who got left behind. But now the tables were turning. Derek Morrison had destroyed my marriage by seducing my wife with promises of a better life. Now it was time for everyone to learn what that better life was really worth. The end came faster than I expected. By Wednesday morning, word of Derek Morrison's financial troubles had spread throughout the local construction community like wildfire. Contractors were calling each other, comparing notes about bounced checks and unpaid bills. By Wednesday afternoon, 3 different companies had filed liens against Morrison's properties. I was in my office, reviewing the final paperwork for the liens, when Vanessa called. "Ray, we need to talk." "About what?" "About Derek, about what you've been saying about his business." "I haven't been saying anything that isn't true." "Can you meet me for coffee, please?" "Where?" "The same place you met Derek last week." An hour later, I was sitting across from my soon-to-be ex-wife in the same coffee shop where I'd had my conversation with Derek Morrison. Vanessa looked tired and worried, like someone who'd been getting bad news all day. "Ray, I need to know the truth about Derek's financial situation." "What has he told you?" "He says it's temporary, a cash flow problem caused by delays in his construction financing. He says everything will be resolved soon." "Do you believe him?" She didn't answer right away. When she did, her voice was quiet and uncertain. "I don't know what to believe anymore." "Vanessa, Derek Morrison is broke. His business is failing. He owes money to contractors all over town, and his properties are about to be foreclosed on." "How do you know all this?" "Because I'm one of the contractors he owes money to, and because I had my accountant research his business dealings." "You investigated Derek?" "I investigated a man who owed me $18,000 and couldn't pay his bills." "Ray, that's what? Smart business practice? Due diligence? Protecting my interests?" "That's vindictive." "No, Vanessa. Vindictive would be if I'd made up lies about Derek to hurt your relationship. What I did was uncover the truth about his business dealings." She sat back in her chair, looking like someone who'd been hit by a truck. "How bad is it?" "Bad. He owes over $400,000 to various lenders, plus at least $100,000 to local contractors. His properties aren't selling, his construction loans have been canceled, and he's personally guaranteed most of the debt." "What does that mean?" "It means he's going to lose everything. The properties, his business, probably his house and his car too." "And then what?" "And then he'll be a broke ex-real estate developer with no assets and a ruined credit rating." Vanessa put her head in her hands. "Oh, God, what have I done?" "You left your husband for a man you thought was successful and ambitious. Unfortunately, he turned out to be neither." "Ray, I'm so sorry. I'm sorry about everything. The affair, the divorce, the way I treated you. I thought Derek was offering me a better life, but I was wrong." "Yes, you were." "Can you forgive me?" I looked at my wife, my ex-wife, sitting across from me in a coffee shop, asking for forgiveness after destroying our 15-year marriage for a man who turned out to be a fraud. 6 months ago, I would have said yes immediately. I would have taken her back, pretended the affair never happened, and tried to rebuild our relationship. But that was 6 months ago. Now I was a different man, living a different life, with a different perspective on what I wanted and what I deserved. "Vanessa, I forgave you a long time ago, but that doesn't mean I want you back." "What?" "I forgave you because holding on to anger was making me miserable. But forgiving you doesn't mean I trust you. And I can't be married to someone I don't trust." "Ray, please. I know I made a terrible mistake, but we can work through this. We can go to counseling, take some time to rebuild our relationship." "No, we can't." "Why not?" "Because you didn't make a mistake, Vanessa. You made a choice. You chose to have an affair for 8 months. You chose to plan our divorce while pretending everything was fine. You chose to leave me for another man. Those weren't mistakes. They were decisions. But I was wrong about Derek. I was wrong about everything." "Yes, you were. But being wrong doesn't undo the choices you made." She started crying then, sitting in the coffee shop where her new boyfriend had promised to take care of her, realizing that her old husband was the only stable thing left in her life. Ray, what am I supposed to do now? The house payments, the car payments, all the bills. I can't afford them on my own. You'll figure it out. Maybe you can get a roommate or sell the house and find something smaller. Maybe Derek will get his business back on track. You know that's not going to happen. Then maybe you'll learn to live within your means. That's harsh. That's reality. Vanessa, for 15 years I supported you while you figured out what you wanted to do with your life. I paid for your education, your career changes, your shopping trips, your girls' nights out. I never complained, never asked for anything in return except loyalty and honesty. And I let you down. Yes, you did. But more than that, you threw it all away for a fantasy. You convinced yourself that you deserved better than what I could give you, and you were willing to destroy our marriage to get it. I was selfish. You were. And now you're dealing with the consequences of that selfishness. We sat in silence for a while, both of us probably thinking about the 15 years we'd spent together and how quickly it had all fallen apart. Finally, Vanessa wiped her eyes and looked at me with something that might have been respect. You're different, Ray. Stronger somehow. I had to get stronger. The alternative was letting this situation destroy me. I never meant for that to happen. I know. But it would have happened anyway if I hadn't learned to take care of myself. So what happens now? Now you sign the divorce papers, I move on with my life, and you figure out how to live with the choices you made. And Derek? Derek's not my problem. He's yours. That evening, I was in my apartment when someone knocked on my door. I opened it to find Derek Morrison standing in the hallway, looking like he hadn't slept in days. Ray, can we talk? About what? About Vanessa, about the situation we're all in. I let him in, curious to hear what he had to say. Derek looked around my small apartment, probably comparing it to the house Vanessa was about to lose. Ray, I want you to know that I never intended for things to turn out this way. How did you intend for them to turn out? I thought my business would be successful. I thought I could give Vanessa the life she wanted. I thought everything would work out. But it didn't. No, it didn't. And now Vanessa's going to pay the price for my failures. Yes, she is. Ray, I have a proposition for you. I'm listening. Take her back. I stared at him. Excuse me? Take Vanessa back. Reconcile with her, cancel the divorce, go back to the way things were before I came along. Why would I do that? Because you love her. Because she needs you. Because she made a mistake, and she deserves a second chance. Derek, are you asking me to take back my wife because you can't afford to support her? His face went red. That's not what this is about. Isn't it? Your business is failing. You're about to lose everything, and suddenly you think Vanessa should go back to her stable, reliable husband who can pay the bills. Ray, I love Vanessa, but I can't give her the life she deserves. And you think I can? I think you're a good man who built a successful business and took care of her for 15 years. I think she was better off with you than she'll be with me. So you're giving up on her. I'm being realistic about my situation. You're abandoning her. I'm trying to do what's best for her. I looked at Derek Morrison, broke, desperate, trying to convince his girlfriend's ex-husband to take her back because he couldn't afford to keep her. 6 months ago, this man had been confident and successful, seducing my wife with promises of a better life. Now he was begging me to clean up the mess he'd made. Derek, let me ask you something. Do you think Vanessa would want to be with you if she knew you were trying to give her back to me like a used car you can't make the payments on? That's not what I'm doing. That's exactly what you're doing. You're trying to return her to the man who can afford to take care of her. Ray, please. I'm trying to do the right thing here. The right thing would have been to not seduce a married woman with lies about your success and stability. I didn't lie about anything. You didn't? You told Vanessa you were a successful businessman with big plans and ambitious projects. You told her you could give her a better life than I could. Were those lies, or were you just delusional? Derek stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the parking lot. I believed my business would be successful. I believed I could make it work. But you couldn't. No, I couldn't. And now you want me to fix the problem you created. I want Vanessa to be happy. No, Derek. You want Vanessa to be someone else's responsibility. He turned around and looked at me with something that might have been desperation. Ray, what if I could pay you back the money I owe your company? What if I could make things right, financially? With what money? I might be able to work something out with my lenders. Maybe restructure the debt, get some additional time to sell the properties. And if you can't, then I'll figure something else out. Derek, you're broke. Your business is finished, your credit is ruined, and you're about to lose everything you own. There is no something else to figure out. There has to be. Why? Because you can't accept that you failed? Because I can't accept that I destroyed Vanessa's life for nothing. That stopped me. For the first time since this whole mess started, Derek Morrison sounded genuinely remorseful about something other than his own financial problems. Derek, you didn't destroy Vanessa's life. She made her own choices. I influenced those choices. Yes, you did. But she's an adult, and she knew what she was doing. Did she? Because I'm not sure I knew what I was doing. What do you mean? I mean, maybe I was so focused on trying to impress her that I convinced myself my business was more successful than it actually was. Maybe I believed my own hype. Maybe you did, but that doesn't change the situation we're all in now. Derek sat back down and put his head in his hands. Ray, I don't know what to do. I'm going to lose everything, and Vanessa's going to lose everything too because of me. Vanessa's not going to lose everything. She's got a real estate license, she's got work experience, and she's got the house until the divorce is finalized. She'll figure out how to take care of herself. Will she? She'll have to. That's what adults do when their lives fall apart. They figure out how to rebuild. Like you did. Like I'm doing. Derek looked around my apartment again, taking in the sparse furniture and simple surroundings. Are you happy, Ray? Living like this, starting over at 40? I'm happier than I was 6 months ago. How is that possible? Because 6 months ago, I was married to a woman who was lying to me, living in a house with someone who didn't want to be there, and pretending that everything was fine when it wasn't. Now, I know where I stand, and I can plan my life accordingly. But you lost everything. No, Derek, I lost some things. My marriage, my house, some of my assets. But I kept the important things. My business, my health, my self-respect. My ability to take care of myself. And that's enough? It's a foundation. I can build on it. Derek stood up and walked to the door. Ray, I want you to know that I respect what you've done here. The way you've handled this situation. The way you've taken care of yourself. I wish I had your strength. You could have had it. But you chose to build your life on lies and borrowed money instead of hard work and honest dealing. I know that now. Now might be too late. For my business, yes, but maybe not for everything else. What do you mean? I mean, maybe I can still do the right thing by Vanessa, even if it's too late to save my relationship with her. How? By telling her the truth about everything, about my business, about my debts, about the fact that I can't give her the life I promised. She already knows about your financial problems. She knows some of it, but she doesn't know all of it. She doesn't know how bad things really are, or how long I've been lying to her about my situation. Derek, if you tell her the whole truth, she'll leave you. I know. And you're okay with that? I'm okay with her making an informed decision about her life instead of basing it on lies I told her. After Derek left, I sat in my apartment and thought about the conversation we just had. For the first time since I'd met him, Derek Morrison had sounded like a man instead of a salesman. He was finally facing the reality of his situation, and he was trying to do the right thing, even if it was too late to save himself. Maybe there was hope for him after all. Not financially, that ship had sailed, but as a human being. Maybe losing everything would teach him something about honesty and responsibility, or maybe he was just trying to manipulate me into feeling sorry for him. Either way, it wasn't my problem anymore. My phone rang. It was Vanessa. "Ray, Derek told me he came to see you tonight." "He did. He told me what he asked you to do." "And I want you to know that I would never ask you to take me back just because my relationship with Derek is falling apart." "I know that." "Do you? Because I'm afraid you think I'm the kind of person who would use you as a backup plan." "Vanessa, what kind of person you are isn't my concern anymore." "It should be. We were married for 15 years. We were. But we're not anymore. Ray, I know I don't have the right to ask you for anything, but I need you to know that I'm sorry. Not just about Derek, but about everything. About the way I treated you, the way I ended our marriage, the way I threw away 15 years for a fantasy. I know you're sorry. And I need you to know that if I could go back and do things differently, I would. But you can't. No, I can't. Vanessa, what do you want from me? I want your forgiveness. You have it. And I want you to know that you were a good husband. You were loyal and hardworking and dependable, and I was an idiot for not appreciating that. Thank you. And I want you to know that I hope you find someone who deserves you. Maybe I will. You will. And when you do, I hope you'll be happy. I hope so too. After we hung up, I realized that this was probably the last real conversation Vanessa and I would ever have. Tomorrow, she would sign the divorce papers and officially end our marriage. Next week, Derek Morrison's world would collapse completely, and she would have to figure out how to rebuild her life. But that was her problem now, not mine. I had my own life to rebuild, and for the first time in months, I was looking forward to it. The divorce was finalized on a Tuesday morning in November. Vanessa signed the papers in her lawyer's office while I signed them in mine. We didn't see each other that day, which was probably for the best. Derek Morrison's business collapsed completely 2 weeks later. The properties were foreclosed on and sold at auction. Most of the contractors, including me, got paid something, but not everything we were owed. Derek lost his house, his car, and his business. Last I heard, he was working as a sales associate for someone else's real estate company, trying to rebuild his life from scratch. Vanessa kept the house for 3 months before realizing she couldn't afford the payments on her real estate agent's income. She sold it and moved into a small apartment across town. We run into each other occasionally at the grocery store or the gas station, and we're polite but distant. She seems to be doing okay, all things considered. As for me, I'm doing better than okay. My business has grown significantly since the divorce. Word got around about how I handled the Morrison situation, professionally, ethically, and without drama, and that brought me new clients who appreciated dealing with a contractor they could trust. I bought a small house on the north side of town, nothing fancy but comfortable and mine. I've got a workshop in the garage, a garden in the backyard, and neighbors who mind their own business. It's a good life, simple and honest, and built on a foundation that won't collapse when the next crisis comes along. Sometimes I think about what would have happened if Vanessa had never met Derek Morrison, if our marriage had continued its slow decline without the catalyst of an affair. Would we still be together, going through the motions of a relationship that had died years earlier? Would we have eventually found our way back to each other, or would we have just grown further apart until we were strangers sharing a house? I'll never know, and that's okay. The past is the past, and I've learned that you can't build a future on regrets and what-ifs. You can only build it on the truth of where you are right now and the choices you make going forward. Derek Morrison taught me something important, though he probably didn't mean to. He taught me that success built on lies and borrowed money is no success at all. Real success, the kind that lasts, comes from hard work, honest dealing, and the patience to build something solid instead of something flashy. Vanessa taught me something too. She taught me that love without trust is just an empty promise, and that loyalty is only meaningful when it's tested and proven genuine. But mostly, I taught myself something. I taught myself that I'm stronger than I thought I was, more resilient than I expected to be, and capable of building a good life even when the old one falls apart. And that's a lesson worth learning, even if it came at a high price.